introduced the SAVE Act last spring, last summer. We passed it out the House floor. We had 5 Democrats who voted for it, if I remember correctly. It's an important piece of legislation. It's pretty simple, really. Just says that if we were having federal elections, that you should have voters who are registered, have proven their citizenship with documentation that demonstrates their citizenship. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. We believe that, American elections deserve to know that you've got American citizens voting in them. So we introduced that legislation. It's pretty straightforward. It passed, like I said, easily, again, with a little some support on the Democrat side of the aisle. And, it's critical given the extent to which now we're seeing increasingly, new evidence of problems with our voter rolls and duplications, social security numbers, and evidence of people who are registering to vote who are not citizens, and some jurisdictions in the country who are actively trying to register non-citizens to vote. Americans want to know that only American citizens are voting, and that's what the bill would do.
And so knowing that it was started, and you said in the spring, what's kind of caused your push for this now?
Well, we introduced it last spring in preparation for the election season. Except we passed it in July out of the House. Unfortunately, the Senate did not move it, and so we weren't able to get it through the Senate. But now we're bringing it up again this year. We've reintroduced the same bill. We hope to be moving it on the House floor sometime in the next couple of weeks, and send it back over to the Senate, where we're happy to have a robust debate. If people want to tweak it, improve it, that's fine. Everybody in Congress should want to know that only American citizens are voting in federal elections. Now, people say, "Oh, Chip, it doesn't matter. It's already unlawful for non-citizens to vote." Yeah, but hold on for a second. It is also very difficult, if not impossible, and in fact, sometimes legally impossible, for states to check the databases to ensure they know that only citizens are on the voter rolls. And importantly, there are jurisdictions. San Francisco, Washington, D.C. was doing this until we stopped it in Congress. New York was doing this, registering non-citizens for local elections. So we're supposed to believe that those jurisdictions are registering all those people, and those people are going to be kept separate in terms of whether they're voting in federal or local elections. We think that only American citizens should vote in federal elections, so that's what the bill would do.
And what's the difference between what the SAVE Act proposes and what the protocol already is? You show up, you have your government issued ID, and you register that way. But what difference are you proposing?
Yeah, you got to use documentary proof of citizenship for future registrations. Now, the way we crafted the bill was to provide for the ability of individuals who are currently registered to still be able to vote, because we don't want to interfere with anybody's ability to vote. But that when you have life-changing events or subject to the state's determination about when they want to change the system over, to then have a process for people to go get their new registration with their materials that demonstrate their citizenship. Now, what would that be? A passport is obvious for the percent of the population that has a passport, which is a sizable chunk. For the people who don't, real IDs, which all 50 states have now adopted, real IDs are compliant with having checked to know against the federal database that you're a citizen. So there's an indication that it's a real ID, and then we know that you are, in fact, a citizen if you are. So those IDs can be used. And then any other documentary proof of citizenship that we allow to be used in the process of the registration. And you can use birth certificates, and you can use certificates of birth if you don't have the originals from the state, but also other forms of identification. We allow them to be joined together for the state to make a determination of whether or not someone's a citizen or not. And so some people have raised this spurious claim that somehow that's going to harm the ability of married women to be able to vote, or anybody else who's a citizen who changed their name. Nothing could be further from the truth. Again, for the 99.999% of the population who shows up to register to vote, they didn't just get married. They didn't just change their name. Almost everyone has the passport, a real ID, or the identification with their existing birth certificates or other forms of ID. Military IDs can be used as well. They can go show that. They can vote, no issue. If you happen to be in that small group of people who just changed your name, maybe you're Chad Ochocinco with the Cincinnati Bengals, or maybe you're a married woman or somebody who changed your name, then fine. You have a process in the bill. States say, look, we'll create a process where you can come forward and demonstrate I was, Sally Smith, and now I'm Sally Jones. And here's the information that shows that, those documents, and the states can then register those voters. No problem. There's no issue. No one will be left out.
And you actually took the question right out of my mouth, asking about people with name changes. There have been some current concerns, I guess, about vagueness within the bill. What do you have to say about that?
Actually, the bill is pretty specific in terms of what it does with respect to requiring documents that will show citizenship, whether it's passport passports, real ID, or other forms. But it then leaves the states, as we should, the ability to kind of fill those holes and let states figure out how they're going to make the process work for people that have a discrepancy. Again, we're talking about a tiny, tiny fraction of people that might have a discrepancy because they changed his or her name. But we allow a process for doing that with the documents that would be allowed to be accepted for proof of citizenship. But then we allow the states to make that determination. And we do that for numerous processes. And by the way, if you change your name, you're almost required to almost immediately go get a new form of, identification for myriad other government services or private services. If you want to fly, if you want to travel, there's a lot of things you need to do, or you need to go get your new ID. So this is just another one of those. And for that tiny fraction, we allow the states the ability to make a determination of how to make that work.
And fearing the sake of redundancy, but just to be clear, there are some people who feel like this act is going to have to cause people to jump through further hoops. So can you kind of explain why or why not that's the case?
No, again, the bill already contemplates that we want to allow people to be able to go vote if they're currently registered when they have life-changing events, or if the state, because the bill does require the state to clean their voter rolls, if the state in determining that function decides to go through and make some changes, then that might cause people to have to then go re-register at some point to demonstrate their citizenship. That would be up to the states. But there should be no real barriers there. We're talking about voting. We're talking about the decisions that decide where our country goes. And you have an absolute right as a citizen to vote. You do not have a right as a non-citizen to vote in federal elections. And it's actually undermining the rights of citizens if we do allow non-citizens to vote. And we know there's evidence of that in various states, of the number of non-citizens that have been on voter rolls that we've found across the board. Texas has found evidence of that as well. So this is an important thing, and we should move it through and get it out of the House and hopefully encourage the Senate to move it.
And just for clarification, when you say non-citizen, are you referring to people who are illegal immigrants in the United States? What does that mean in your language?
It literally means non-citizen. And I don't mean that flippantly. I just mean anyone who is not a citizen of the United States does not have the right to vote in a federal election. Some local jurisdictions can allow non-citizens to vote. Maybe you're a legal permanent resident or otherwise. I can question the wisdom of that, but that's up to local jurisdictions. Federally, though, we have laws that require you to be a citizen of the United States, and that's all defined in law, and we all know what that is. You know if you're a citizen of the United States. It's a precious thing that you either get because you're born of American citizens, or you're naturalized and you went through the process, and for whom that is a particularly momentous occasion for most of the people I've ever been when I've seen naturalization ceremonies or talked to people who naturalized.
And is there anything else that you would like to say or add, whether it be about the SAVE Act or anything else that you might want to touch on?
No, I mean, this legislation is simple. It is wildly popular, and all of this, claims that it's going to impede anybody being able to vote because of a name change. It's totally fake news. It's just not true. And so I just think people should read the bill, look at it, and go see the options that you have, and you'll see why we're doing it, to protect the integrity of elections.
And people who are wanting to learn more about the SAVE Act, where can they go? Where should they look?
Oh, sure. And then go to roy.house.gov. That's my official House website. It's also out there on social media at Rep Chip Roy on Twitter, and on my personal account too at Chip Roy TX. But you can go find it out there. But roy.house.gov is the best place to look.
And my final question for you, how do you believe that the SAVE Act will positively impact the federal elections of the United States?
Yeah, sure. By guaranteeing that only citizens can register to vote and making sure that we've got safeguards in place to do that, we then guarantee the protection of the right to vote for citizens, because their vote is diluted when you allow non-citizens to vote. And we certainly don't want the system to be gamed by people who are here illegally, or even if they're legal permanent residents or they're on visas. The country is supposed to be determined, our votes and the Republican form of government is supposed to be determined by citizens. And this would protect that right, that precious right. And that's the purpose of the bill.